So hi, everybody. My name is Alan, and I am here to talk about innovation, about work, about people, basically about life these days. And I think it's important to discuss these things. Just a bit about myself. I come from Mexico, actually. I started my career as a design engineer for power plant control systems. So I'm a mechatronics engineer. I came to Switzerland to do an MBA, did a PhD, went to Stanford to study innovation-related things, came back, set up a lab at ETH Zurich focused on what we call human-centered innovation. Started a consulting company out of that, left the consulting company to my partners, went to the corporate job, came back and started another company focused on education. So I've been for the last, let's say, 10 years, very much around everything that has to do with innovation and also a lot of innovation theater. But most importantly, and especially after our warm up this morning, I am Mexican, and in Mexico we love hugs. And I know this is a kind of a weird combination of topics, but bear with me. I think hugs are something that we're really, really missing these days, and they're actually known to cause great benefits. Hugs help us reduce stress. They also help us kind of boost up our immune system. They lower our heart rate and blood pressure, and they're really, really helping us decrease depression. These are all things we need to talk about, and we need to kind of work on these days. So before we start getting to that, I wanted just to talk a little bit about what we miss about 2019. What are the things that we had back there that we look back on and we basically maybe took for granted and now are really missing? First of all, I guess just meeting up with friends, meeting up with people, casual conversations, a Sunday brunch, an afternoon grill. Team sports. We were told that we could run by ourselves around the street, but what about team sports, playing basketball, football, etc.? All these things are kind of gone. Concerts, well, good luck to that. And if you have been to a concert recently, shame on you, but kind of having this sense of being surrounded by a crowd of people that has the same passion and enthusiasm as yourselves. And we see it today. If we'd be all together in one place, we'd feel that energy around us. Traveling, I think that's obvious. I think we are probably what we call the EasyJet generation in research. We basically, the last 10, 15 years, we got used to basically hopping on a plane and going anywhere at any time, at any given moment. And we kind of got used to that. And that's something that's gone away these days. And finally, going back to the hugs, it's human connection. Being able to feel someone's kind of warmth towards us and how we kind of share more than just work. Being colleagues is also means someone close to you, and we've disconnected these things recently. Now, if we go back to March 2020, I'm sure lots of you thought, well, this can't be so bad. We're going to spend some time at home. Doesn't look too terrible. First of all, we didn't have to wake up unnaturally early, we thought. Life's pretty easy in that sense. We can just wake up whenever we want and do our work from home. That sounds pretty great. Then we thought, well, we don't have to spend all this crazy time in the car and commuting from place to place. Again, I'm all for that too. And finally, one of the things, especially kind of nowadays, is we can work with less interruptions, we thought. This sounds great, less people coming around and getting us out of our in the zone time. However, we soon realized that it wasn't exactly going to be like that. We've been booking end-to-end Zoom meetings without letting us pretty much take a pee break. And I'm sure we've all been there where we have like one after the next. That's basically put us sometimes even to work more than we had before. Forget about not waking up early. Now you have to take calls at 7 a.m. from the other side of the world. Our diet has not improved very much. It also helped us kind of get up to the fridge and grab whatever we find. Not much time for cooking. We're ordering pizza more often than we'd like. And hey, I love pizza, but our diets are starting to show. Then for lots of us, I've got 3 little kids at home, and we started to become teachers as well. Besides doing our full-time job, we're starting to have to make sure our kids do their homework. And again, anybody who has kids knows that this is easier said than done these days. So much for working without distractions. Kid or no kid, may it be the mailman or the temptation of walking up to the fridge, it's been really, really hard to keep ourselves basically on focus work sometimes. And finally, we go back to the human connections. Well, guys, it's kind of depressing that we're celebrating weddings, birthdays, bar mitzvahs. I've seen even baptisms celebrated on Zoom these days. If any of you have been in a long distance relationship, well, you know it kind of sucks. And essentially that's what we've been doing for the last 6 months. Even if we have a Zoom Pro account, it still pretty much sucks. Now, what I want to tell you here is that honestly, none of this is actually really new. If we keep on going this way, it's actually going to probably get a bit worse. For those of you who don't know these cartoons, check out the Oatmeal. Really, really cool cartoonist. And this was actually from 2016. So this is far away from where we are today. But the issue with our degradation of social skills is actually quite serious. And as I mentioned, it's nothing new. So let me show you why this is so important and serious. Number one, we've done some research on future trends, and we've seen a very, very, very high likelihood and very, very big impact on what we call the single society. More and more people are living by themselves, and kind of young professionals are basically kind of having a more of a lonely life. Now, you might think, you know, wow, what's so wrong with this? I want to share with you a story of some research that was done. I think 3 years ago, and on this research, they put a little mouse into isolation for 40 days. They left this mouse, they fed him, etc., but he was basically by himself for 40 days. And after 40 days, they put in another mouse in his habitat, and the immediate reaction of mouse number one was to basically kill mouse number two. This is part of a larger research study, but essentially isolation really, really leads to more aggressive behavior, more kind of feeling that the world around us is against us. And this is problematic, especially when we see the current political situation. Further back, there's been done lots of research on, for example, loneliness. And 3 in 5 adults in the US in 2018 considered themselves lonely. It's just pretty big number of people. But it's not just in the US. In Germany, a recent survey on what's the most serious problems in society these days found that 2/3 of people believe loneliness to be kind of quite a serious problem. Finally, in the UK, and this is where I found kind of even sadder, 1 in 8 Britons admitted in 2019 they didn't have a single person they could rely on. And I doubt that 1 in 8 people don't have anybody around them, but that's how they feel. This led the UK government to appoint a minister of loneliness. Yeah, I know this sounds crazy, but there's a minister of loneliness in the UK since 2018. It's called Tracy Crouch. So we're actively working kind of on this issue, and it's only been exacerbated by the current situation. Now, I bet at this point, you all kind of feel like a hug right now. And good, because I do want to shake you up on what's going on, because the first thing we need to do is really realize that there is a problem, and it doesn't just have to do with these externalities that we call the pandemic. Now, moving on from there, you might ask, okay, so I got you. We need hugs, but what does any of this have to do with innovation? And lots of you have probably seen this image in the past about our left brain and our right brain. And of course, I know my audience is mostly full of basically engineers and technical people. This sounds a little wishy-washy, but there is quite a lot of truth into this. We did some research. I work at ETH, as I mentioned. We did some research in 2016 where we put top managers from engineering firms and successful innovators into fMRI machines and essentially scanned their brain as they were doing different tasks. And we essentially saw how different parts of the brain light up and different forms of decision making. What is really interesting about this research is actually the parts that are basically responsible for innovation are what we call a neuroplastic part of the brain, which the good news is that these are things we can work on. These are things we can improve. These are the things that we can basically kind of push forward, push the boundaries of individually and as a group, but also parts that if we let go, they lose practice. So same as this morning with our warm-up session, we need to exercise our brain. Now, what does this convergent and divergent thinking have to do? Well, we call this essentially exploration and exploitation. We call it more in terms of business terms. We call it ambidexterity. And if any of you have followed people like Alexander Osterwalder on the Business Model Canvas and how we're pushing towards innovation in large firms, we talk about companies being able to be ambidextrous, which means being able to balance out the work they do and exploiting the resources they have and doing the best with what they have, but also exploring new opportunities and looking out there. Of course, a very good example of this is, for example, Amazon, which has managed to consistently basically keep on finding new areas of business, exploring them, sometimes shutting them down, sometimes growing them. But this in the end also comes down to individuals, to us as people. And here we need to look at two different sides of this divergent convergent thinking as individuals. The first of it, which is focus work. When people talk about innovation, they actually underestimate how important it is to have time for ourselves, time to really, really kind of look down into what we're doing and basically zoom out of distractions. We think that innovation is really about kind of going out and looking for new things consistently, but it's actually sometimes we need to look inside the box and work on our box. But as well, as we mentioned, we have the exploration side. We need exchange. We need to talk to other people. A few years back, someone looked into Charles Darwin's journals. They analyzed it. Charles Darwin, theory of evolution, and when he was asked of how he came up with this brilliant theory, he could kind of talk about this eureka moment. But actually, when analyzing his journals, researchers found that over a 10-year period, he had actually been already connecting the dots from different things. He had the underlying concepts there. He had just not managed to bring them all together. And again, this is why we need this balance between focus work and exchange. Now, if we go back to my story earlier, well, we are, number one, deprived of sometimes time for this focus work, to be really without distractions and kind of rushing from one thing to the next. And on the other hand, we're definitely being deprived of the opportunity for exchange. And some of us might say, hey, look, well, I still have kind of my neighbors and my wife, my kids, but we need a larger circle. We need a larger circle of people that actually kind of bring us these dots that we need to connect. So this is kind of what we call the exploration, exploitation focus for innovation. Now, again, the key for innovation was not one or the other, is actually being able to switch between them. And again, as I mentioned, this requires some work. Now, so what can you do about these things? On the focus side of things, first of all, something that you really, really need to kind of very practical is basically don't overdo the Zoom calls or Teams or whatever it is you do. Life is really not Tetris, and it happened to me, and it's happened to all of us. That suddenly, well, we have 10 hours in the day, and actually, I can squeeze 10 Zoom calls. I don't think I ever had as many meetings in one day as I had when this whole thing happened. Something very, very clear to keep in mind is keep it down to 45-minute calls. If you need an hour, really kind of it's not necessary to put a full hour. 45 minutes more than enough, and take that 15-minute break. Now, don't take that 15-minute break to prepare your next meeting. Really just stand up, walk around, go around. Other thing is, don't take more than 6 calls in a day. It's not healthy. We need to keep that balance between our time for, again, just standing up, breathing some air, go for a walk, and come back to our teams. The next thing is really take time for lunch and coffee breaks. Now, again, because we're sitting at home and we're ordering pizza, it's great to just kind of, turn off your camera. And I'm sure lots of you are having breakfast right now, but you're not giving yourself the time to really kind of wind down. These time breaks are really kind of important for our health, for our brain. And finally, try to make sure that whenever you do have in-person meetings, whenever you manage to have a person meeting, try to reserve that for creative work. Try to think wisely of when we're doing our in-person and when we're doing our Zoom meetings. When we reserve like in-person for things that require more of an exploration, we're actually making more use of the person we have next to us. Now, we all joke that, this meeting could have been another email, and that happens quite a lot. So by keeping this in mind, we're really trying to kind of make sure that we put the emails where they're supposed to be, with the update calls where they're supposed to be. And when we have a meeting, we make the most of it for creative work. Now, on the exchange side, now here I really want to kind of encourage you guys to go deeper when it comes to exchange. What do I mean with this? A lot of companies have gone on to talk about, okay, yes, we're doing kind of all the time, we're doing basically update calls, and we have a fun warm up in the morning. But do we really understand how people are feeling? Something we've done within our team, and I've seen a couple of other companies take, is as a team lead, make a little survey, and again, change the survey every week and send it out to people and try to get them to honestly express how they're feeling. How are they feeling anxious about certain things? What's worrying them? What do they need, not just for work, but in their personal life? What are they missing? And discuss this together. This exercise brings people closer together. The other thing is ask for help. Especially here in Europe, we're very used to we solve our own issues. Lots of us live farther away from our family than we used to back in the day. We're problem solvers. We're fighters, and we got this far, basically fending for ourselves. But we also had people along the way. And if we do not ask for help, we're not going to get it. And I think it's really important to realize that, again, sometimes our colleagues can be the most neutral person to hear us out. Now, I'm not going to break the boundaries between personal and professional, but sometimes a colleague with which we have a good relationship will be the most neutral person, letting us know what we should go for or what we should be thinking about. The next thing is be mindful of the people around you. One thing we really don't do enough is to tell people how much we appreciate what they do for us, what they do for our team, and how important they are for us. We're very much used to being in these high performance teams where everybody's just kind of, pushing forward. But do you sometimes take a moment to look to your left, look to your right, and tell the person there, hey, I think you did a fantastic job here, or hey, thanks to you, I learned this, or thanks for that feedback. Really be mindful of letting people appreciate that, because you don't know what they're thinking, how they're feeling about this. And that lack of emotional intelligence is actually leading us to actually feeling sometimes even more lonely. And the last practical tip I'd like to share with you is what we call double check emotions. Now, this is an exercise that was recommended to me by one of our team members, who's actually a psychologist. And she said that, hey, Alan, sometimes I've realized that you're not very good at kind of noticing when people are uncomfortable or where they're not happy with a decision that's been taken. And she's right. Sometimes I just kind of, okay, we're doing this, everybody good, go, attack. However, we do have an opportunity to double check sometimes. Is that person actually upset, or are we thinking, okay, he's always reacting like this? Something very simple you can do, and especially at the end of a Zoom call, when you're just seeing people's faces, is if you notice someone is feeling uncomfortable, someone is particularly kind of upset about a certain decision that was made, or someone was super excited about it, we can go back to this person and say, hey, Sammy, do you really feel kind of upset about the decision that was taken? Now, this person might be a bit taken aback by you asking, because this is not very common for people to double check that. One thing might be this person says, no, actually, that was fine. So then we're basically creating a benchmark for what we perceive to what's reality. But maybe this person says, yeah, actually, I didn't think about it because A, B, C, D. The fact that you asked makes this person feel like you care. And this is important, especially for team leads. So try to always kind of double check how our team is doing. And again, this happens even with our clients. When we have a client meeting, how are our clients perceiving the work that we're doing? Now, again, we're going back to what does this have to, we're talking about work, we're talking about how we manage with teams, we're talking about how we manage our own time and our emotions. But when we talk about innovation, I'm sure this little diagram you've seen quite a lot. We always talk about innovation in these three different bubbles. Number one is okay, is this technically feasible? And as a tech company, you're always tackling this. Can we do this? Someone in the business is probably wondering, okay, is this viable? Can we do it in the right amount of budget? Can we maintain this? But we always talk about, when we talk about human-centered innovation, of let's start with the people we're designing for. And I've designed a lot of, let's say, softwares for enterprise. And many times we don't stop to ask the people we're designing for, what do they need? How do they feel about, SAP's newest update? Is this actually helping them? So we always talk about this human side of innovation. And again, when we go back to the current situation we're in, is like, well, we had a situation where people are not feeling very much heard. They're not feeling appreciated. They're not feeling part of where we're at. We have a situation now where we're putting an extra level of complication there. So how do we manage to get this? Now, on the other hand, we say, hey, look, guys, we are in a situation where we've got a lot of constraints, but these constraints are actually showing us what we can do. And something I've been preaching over and over since this whole thing started is that really kind of the time to innovate is right now. We have a lot of opportunities that are popping up. And the question is, can we tackle them? And are we strong enough as a team, as individuals, to basically kind of exploit those opportunities? I know you've all looked at this little meme on LinkedIn or Twitter. But it really is kind of interesting how we went from having a 2-year plan on how we were going to move to remote working, if ever, and then suddenly within a weekend, okay, everybody is using Microsoft Teams, or everybody rolled out Zoom in a large organization. Now, again, this sounds a bit like a joke, but actually, times of crisis, times of hardship have actually generated some of the most incredible innovations in history. These are just a few, and look around. Thank you very much to the Cold War for email. Now we can complain about that. But if we look back in history, it was during these hard times where we came up with amazing things. Now, where are we going to find these new innovations for the time we're living in now? And are we as individuals and we as a team really going to be there kind of at the right mindset and at the right point that we can actually exploit these opportunities? I totally believe that we can find more than just digital transformation. And we're seeing a lot of things in universities that are changing basically their entire infrastructure as they realize that, frontal classes are not that much added value, but it's actually engagement between students. We see retail patterns changing where people are engaging more with their communities. We see a lot of different changes in how we're working. And the question is, how can we make the most out of it? Now, it's up to you as a team and as a company, as an innovative company, to think what other opportunities can we find? And how can we make the most of our own, let's say, smartness, of our own intelligence, but also of our own basically mental health, as well as that of our team, to find these. So the last thing I would leave you there is, again, find some innovative ways to hug your colleagues and be mindful of our people around us and all the opportunities that we have lie ahead. That's all for me. I'm very happy to give you a lot more details on different research things I mentioned. But first and foremost, I think the thing I want you to take with you is, don't underestimate how people around you are feeling, and don't be afraid to ask for help, and do the best you can to make sure you create the opportunities to have both this focused work time and this exchange of ideas and this personal touch. Thank you very much. That is all for me.